round of applause for Danielle Alvarez. Well, I mean, you've had an amazing journey. You started cooking in California, is that right? Tell us.
Well, actually, I went to cooking school in Florida, which is where I'm from.
Right.
And then I applied for an internship at the French Laundry, which is
one of the best restaurants in the world.
Yeah, 3 Michelin star kitchen. I'd never worked in a restaurant before. That was my first restaurant
How old
job.
were you, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, I had worked in other places, so I think it was 20. I came to cooking after going to university and studying art history.
Right. Well, why cook? So why study art and then jump into cooking?
I studied art because I didn't know what else to study, and that just seemed like the easiest one, so I could still have fun.
Right.
And then, I got my degree in that, and I started working in that space, and I just realized that wasn't anything that I was passionate about. But cooking, on the other hand, was something that I spent all my weekends doing. I have a family that loves and adores food, and I just couldn't think of anything more that I wanted to do with my time. So without working in a restaurant before, which I'm not sure I really recommend, I think experience when you're starting out is good to know what you're getting into. I enrolled in cooking school, got my degree, and my first job was out in California.
Right.
And then I stayed in California for about 8 years.
So first job, French Laundry?
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
Terrifying.
Terrifying, yeah. One of the best restaurants in the world, Thomas Keller, incredible chef.
Yeah.
How did you get that job?
I wrote a letter. People ask me this all the time, but I stick by the value of a well-worded letter that expresses, why you want to work somewhere. So you need to understand why you want to work somewhere. You've done your research, you know what they're about, you know what they do. I think you can get a job in absolutely any restaurant you want to work in if you know how to express and communicate why you want to work there.
And how long were you at the French Laundry?
I was there for a year total.
Yeah.
I worked in the kitchen, and I also worked front of house.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And was that by choice, or was that part of the program?
Yeah, that was by choice, because I really wanted to understand that side of the business too. I mean, as you say, Luke, it totally is hand in hand. Like, you cannot have a kitchen without your floor team.
Yep.
And I knew I wanted to get a bit of experience, and they're just like, it's like beautiful choreography working in that front of house.
When it comes together.
Yes, yeah. It doesn't always, but
No,
especially if I was on the floor.
Exactly. So after French Laundry, you went to Chez Panisse.
Yeah.
So Chez Panisse, Alice Waters, one of the world's greatest chefs as well. How did you get that?
Again, I wrote a letter.
Another letter. See, letters.
Yeah.
Don't text, write letters.
No, exactly. Write a proper letter. I mean, it's probably email is fine these days, but those are really coveted roles. Like, this is a restaurant that's been around now for over 55 years in California, and chefs stay there for 14, 15 years, which is really unheard of for our industry, but I think the quality of life that you get there is just brilliant. And so it just so happened that someone was leaving that role, and so when I sent that letter, they really needed someone pretty quickly, and the timing, the stars, whatever you want to call it all aligned.
Right. So before you came to Australia in 2014, was that your last job in the US?
That's right, yeah.
So would you say that, who influenced you more, Thomas Keller or Alice Waters, or they both combined? Or?
Well, they both did, but I think Alice ultimately. I think that style of cooking really spoke to me. I mean, I wanted to go to California from the start because I wanted to work with the best produce. And I just knew that that was something I wasn't going to get in Florida, where I was from, and I knew that was a value for me.
Yeah.
So I got some of that at the French Laundry because they use amazing produce too. But the way that Alice and the team at Chez Panisse works with the farms and with the farmers to write the menus that change every single day and bring that food to the table, it was just magical, and I knew I wanted to be a part of that.
Would you say Alice was a mentor?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I could still call on her now, which I think is a great thing for all of you to understand, that if you commit and work hard somewhere, I feel like the people that lead you in those spaces will always be there for you. They will always be a champion for you.
So after that, you came to Australia.
Yeah.
What brought you to Australia?
Justin Hems, actually. He got in touch with me. I wasn't a known chef or anything, so he was totally taking a chance on me, but we shared a vision for creating the beautiful restaurant that became Fred's.
Fred's, yeah.
And he wanted to do a restaurant with that style of like farm-to-table food. And I was ready to step out of my comfort zone and do something I'd never done before.
And was that your first head chef role?
First head chef role.
Wow. So you're Chez Panisse, how long were you there again?
4 years.
4 years. So you've been cooking for about 5 years.
There was a few years in between. I'd
Sure.
probably been cooking at that point by 8 years.
Yeah.
And I but I'd never like designed a kitchen, which if you've seen Fred's now, you'll
Which
know that
stunning.
why I've never designed
But
another one.
stunning,
It's
right?
stunningly beautiful, but
Yeah.
quite tricky to work in. And I'd never managed a team. So I think that was a really steep learning curve for me.
Yeah, because I mean, staff are the most important thing for a head
Huge.
chef or a restaurant
Everything.
manager.
Yeah.
So how did you cope with that? How did you just taught yourself to?
Well, I failed a lot at the start.
You failed?
I mean, ultimately, I think, survived and thrived.
Yeah.
But the first few years were super challenging. There was a lot of times where I felt really out of my depth, and I was just trying to get by. I mean, that's the thing though, like being a chef especially, it's not just about the food. You have to manage your team, you have to manage your costs, you're responsible for so many things that are not just creating beautiful food, although you can never fail there.
Yeah.
And I think it's those other things that just took me a few years to get my head around, but I was lucky to have the support of Maryvale.
So you 5 or so years at Fred's, was it?
It was 8 years with Maryvale,
Yeah.
6 years at Fred's.
Yeah. And obviously that opened a lot of doors for you.
Yeah.
You've now written 2 cookbooks and
Yeah.
a new one just released.
Yeah,
Tell us
that's
about
right.
that.
Recipes for a Lifetime of Beautiful Cooking just came out at the end of October. I'm so proud of it. It's totally geared towards the home cook, but I think I wouldn't have had any opportunity to write a cookbook or do many of the other things I do now had it not been for Fred's and for Maryvale.
Yeah. What led you to move on from Fred's? I mean, it sounded like one of the best roles.
Yeah, it
Great
was.
restaurant.
And look, I still really miss it. And I miss the team that I was working with there at the time. And one of the most beautiful restaurants I'll probably ever work in.
Yeah.
But I think I was just ready for new challenges. I was pretty burnt out after the COVID years and felt like I just needed some time for myself again. And
Yeah.
that's where I've been since.
And you've only just started in something new.
Yeah,
Tell us
so
about that.
I'm the culinary director of the event spaces of the Sydney Opera House.
Which is pretty massive from
Yeah.
where you've come from.
Yeah, and I'm still learning a lot about that as I go. But I guess that's the greatest thing I've learned about hospitality and cooking, and especially now. I'm not sure that 20, 30 years ago it would have been the same, but there are so many diverse and varied opportunities out there for anyone that wants to work hard, is okay with stepping out of their comfort zone, wants to challenge themselves, all of that. If you're okay with that, you can do almost anything.
Yeah. So lots of ups and downs in our industry, in front of house and back of house. Tell us, you've clearly had lots of ups. Tell us about some of the downs and how you managed to get through them.
How much time do we have?
Wow, we are on a clock, but we keep going.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll tell you about one down that I think is really relatable for probably where a lot of you are right now. It was when I was working at Chez Panisse.
Yeah.
And the menu changed every day, so you'd walk in every day, you didn't know what you were cooking. There were no recipes, you were just cooking on the fly. So you really had to have a team of people that knew how to do that. But on this particular day, I was making the paella, and we'd make it in a giant fire, like in a fireplace. It was a rabbit paella. I'd never cooked rabbit before, didn't know how to prep it, and was thrown in. And with the support of my coworkers, I was able to get it ready for service. But the owner of the restaurant came in that night, and Alice sat down, and I served her paella. And she jumped up from the table as soon as tasting the first bite and came over and was like, "The rabbit is completely raw." And I had served her a completely raw rabbit. And so I guess that's a good point to illustrate that you will mess things up. Things will go wrong. It doesn't mean it's the end of your career or the end of your life, which is what I felt in that moment. I never wanted to shrink down into a little ball as much. But it does teach you a really good lesson about paying attention.
To cook rabbit.
To cook rabbit, to cook anything.
Yeah.
But, mistakes do happen as part of it.
Yeah. And looking back, what advice would you give a younger Danielle?
I think I would say be patient. I think a lot of young chefs come in and want to climb the ranks really quickly and become head chef really fast. And actually, because it is an industry that is very changing, you often do get those opportunities before you're really ready for it. But I would say spend some time just learning about cooking. Because once you get into like management roles, that sort of becomes all you do, and you spend less and less time cooking, which is the thing I love. So, you know, as much as I can get my hands in there now, that's what I do. But once you become a manager, it becomes so much about people and like less about the food.
And one last question from me before we move to the audience. Do you think you'll ever have your own business here in Australia, run your own restaurant, or was that not something you aspire to?
I don't know. I think I'm still really enjoying where I'm at the moment. I think long term, I would like to. But as far as what, where, how, I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Amazing. So I think we've got a few questions from audience. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Sebastian Plummer. I'm studying Commercial Cookery Certificate 3, and I was wondering, has being a woman in a male-dominated profession presented any unique challenges, and if so, how did you overcome them?
I've never worked in a place that made me feel like because I'm a woman, I had more challenges or less challenges or whatever. I feel like I've always worked for a lot of women, which helps because I think that, you know, just makes it a bit more equitable for women. But I think there are certain times where if I've worked in teams that were like all women, I think that there's been a bit of conflict there that can arise. So I feel like trying to find venues that have both men and women and the teams are equal and it feels really like a safe space for everyone, those are the best places to work, and try to find them. Yeah.
Wonderful. I think we have one more question.
Hey, my name's Mikhail Zamet. I'm doing my Certificate 3 in Commercial Cookery. I had a question. If a young chef was considering giving up in the industry that had previously they enjoyed, but was now struggling, what advice would you give?
Sometimes the only way out is through, and you have to keep going. A lot of times a good break is good. And I'd say, you know, what's that saying? You can't see the forest for the trees. Like, if you're so in it sometimes and it's just not going your way and you've had a bad run of a few months, you're working too hard, whatever, it's really good to take a step back and just try to reconnect with all the positive things that you love about it, the job, because a lot of times it's just burnout that really leads to a lot of that. And maybe you've had struggles in your personal life or whatever, which is normal. You're always going to have those moments in your career. But if you can afford to take a step back, take a little bit of a break, and then come back to it, that's my advice.
Thank you.
And good advice at that. I think we have lucky last question.
Oh, great.
Hi, my name is Sally Van. I'm studying Certificate 3 in Commercial Cookery. Love to get a mini-series on the art of letter writing.
Oh, thank you.
My question for today is, how do you balance sustainability and cost to ensure the sustainability of the business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say, you know, it's interesting, if it's not sustainable as a business, if the costs don't work out, then nothing else matters. So you have to make sure that you're profitable as a business, which means really digging into the numbers and not being afraid to do that. I think if you're trying to support small farms, you'd be surprised at actually that there's quite little cost difference in a lot of like the raw fruits and vegetables. Sometimes it's even cheaper buying it from a small local farm because they don't have someone in the middle that they need to pay. So I'd say it's just about managing those costs, but I really believe it's possible, and I think I'm proof that it's possible because Fred's was quite profitable, and you know, we never sacrificed on ingredients. So you can do it if you have to charge the right price though. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, big round of applause.
Thank you.